What is up, beautiful people? Welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be doing a more bronzy eye look with you guys, and I'm going to be using the brand new Tarte Aspyn Ovard eyeshadow palette. This palette has been selling out like crazy at Ulta, and I'm not exactly sure why, but this is the palette right here. You're going to get a blush, a highlighter, and 9 eyeshadows inside of here. And as you can see, the palette is a little bit dirty, and of course you'll see why it is dirty and why it looks like a hot mess later on in the video. But of course, if you want to see the look that I did today using this palette, then of course subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and of course keep on watching to see the swatches, my final thoughts, and the review on this palette. Okay, so as you can see, the base is on, my contour is on, my brows are on, and we're just going to dive right into the palette. We're going to dive right into the Tarte Aspyn Ovard Eye and Cheek palette. Now, the outside is actually very stunning because you have that little floral moment. It's really pretty. Then the inside, we're going to have a blush, a highlighter, and the 9 eyeshadows. Now, by just looking at this palette right here, it's very bland, I would say. It's very bland, it's very basic, it's very neutral palette. It's just, to me, all 4 of these almost look exactly identical, and I feel like they just don't show up nearly enough. And I just feel like if I were to have done a neutrals palette, I would have done more diversity of neutrals, not just like for standard pale skin tones. Let me just mention really quick one of my favorite comments that I saw on the Trend Mood page, and she said, well, the girl is at Pennington Sarah, and she said, this palette is so white girl basic, it just asked me for a non-fat, no whip frappuccino. I thought that was actually really funny because it really makes sense, because that palette looks so much like a basic white girl eyeshadow palette because it's just a very neutral. It's very, very neutral and more bronzy toned, but it's really just standard. Just by looking at this eyeshadow palette, it's just very pale tones, and I'm going to show you guys a picture really quick. It is of me and my friend Santana from work, and I swatched this palette on her skin and my skin, and as you can see, it is way too pale for her, and it doesn't suit her deeper complexion. And I feel like that's just wrong, and I would want to have more diversity in a nude, natural, normal eyeshadow palette, no matter how basic it is. If there's no diversity in it, then I really just don't want to deal with it. But I wanted to try it out. It was selling out like crazy, so there must be something going on that's right about this palette. It has been selling out like crazy, and of course, in my store and a few other stores I've seen from Ulta have been selling it out. So, you know what? We're just going to dive right in and try it. So, today, before we get started with the eyes, I really want to finish off my face because there is a blush and highlighter in this palette right here. So, I'm going to take the shade Made You Blush right here and just kind of pop that on and see what happens. But, before we go in with the blush, let me show you guys some swatches of this palette on my skin tone besides showing you that picture. So, on top, we have the blush, which is called Made You Blush, the highlighter, which is called Pure Soul, then we have the eyeshadows, Brilliance, Santorini Sands, Married Life, High School Sweetheart, Heart of Gold, Tea Time, Endless Summer, Road Trip, and Wanderlust. As you can see, the eyeshadows definitely are paler in tone until you get down to Heart of Gold, and it gets like a lot deeper. I feel like the palette did swatch really nicely, but this is my second attempt at this eyeshadow palette, so let me just tell you right now, I did not have a great attempt the first time, but I wanted to give it another chance. I wanted to give it with better lighting, wanted to give it another go around with a different type of look and different type of vibe, so that's what we're going to do. So, like I said, let's go in with the blush first. Now let's go in with the highlighter. That's going to be the shade Pure Soul right here, and see how much pigment we're going to get. Because the first time I went in with this highlighter, I really had to dig in there just to get enough pigment. So we're going to try with a smaller brush. This is my A23 from Anastasia, which never lets me down. But let me just show you the pan really quick. I mean, look at that. If you can see that. Like, look how much powder cake back there was in this. I'm going to say right now, that was crap. Like, I've had highlighters from Tarte before. The Tarte Pro Glow is phenomenal. But that was horrible. Like, there was, like, not enough pigment in the brush for me to even get a good amount of color to it. And, like, swatching it, it looks okay, but it's almost chunky, and I really just don't like the way that looks. Like, my palette is, like, drenched in powder right now, and that looks really terrible. So, you know what? Let's just dive right into the eyes before we give a final thought on this, because like I said, this is my second attempt, so we'll hope that this one is better. Now we're going to dive right into the eyes. For the first shade, we're going to go in with Santorini Sands right here. Is it just me, or do I hate that there is a capitalized letter in a whole bunch of lowercase? Like, I feel like that's a typo error, because Santorini Sands is capitalized, but the Sands part is not capitalized, if you can see that, even though it's upside down. But everything else is not capitalized. It's just, it looks weird to me. I don't like that. So let's just dive right in. So you can definitely see there is going to be a little bit of a powder kickback to it, but so far not too terrible. It just, there is a lot of powdery kickback to this, and I'm just going to say that right now. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There is a lot of powder kickback, more than I'm used to with Tarte, so I'm not exactly sure if it's like a different formula or what it is about. I do not want to give this a negative review, but right now, so far, it's pretty much negative, because I feel like these colors don't show up nearly enough, not even on my skin tone, and I'm pretty fair myself. I just feel like some of these colors just don't look the greatest, and they also don't really blend as amazing as I want it to. You can kind of see how messy that one is. That one's super messy. Like, this palette is just messy. So now let's just dive right into the crease again. We're gonna go in with the shade High School Sweetheart. I think that I'm going to, you know, attempt to deepen my crease a little bit. Same thing, very, very powdery kickback, which I'm not exactly loving. Attempt to deepen the crease a little bit more. We're going to go in with the shade Tea Time, which is this like neutral brown on the bottom, which all of them are really neutral, but the other one was more rosy. This one is going to be more of a neutral brown. There is a little bit of like a warm tone to it, and there's just a lot of, I don't know if you can see that, like a lot of powder kickback. Like, it's almost like smoke. Like, can you see that? So that's what's going on right now. Not the greatest. It's looking better than what I was getting earlier today, so I mean, it's not absolutely terrible, but I am going to do something different than what I did earlier. I'm going to do like a cut crease instead for my lid color. I'm going to use the shade Heart of Gold like I used earlier. This one, you definitely do not need to be doing it dry. You'd better put it on with a wet brush or with your finger, because it is a chunky glitter. Now I'm going to just kind of cut my crease. I'm going to take a little bit of the concealer I've been using today. I'm going to wet my brush with some MAC Fix Plus, and I'm just going to dive right into the shade Heart of Gold. Because of it being more of a bronzier, glittery shade, I'm going to definitely need a wet brush, because this thing has a lot of fallout. Now that it's on the lid, it doesn't really pack on very well. Also, I don't know what to do with this, because like if I apply a little bit more, it's going to look really, really chunky. But also, the more I like swoosh it around, it almost like it's separating off of my eye. So don't touch it too much. I'm going to just kind of like fix this up a little bit and do my other eye, obviously, and then I'll be right back. Still get a lot of fallout anyways, and just take a look at my brush. Like, it is so frayed and upset pretty much, and the color looks pretty good. It just took a lot. So for the outer corner, before we go in with the lower lash line, obviously we're going to go in with the shade Road Trip, and I'm going to try to make that mimic the crease just a little bit too. I want you guys to see this blending right now. Look how it's like bunched up right there, and how it's like no pigment right here. Then look at how much fallout I have on my face. Like, that's what I'm getting right now with this palette, and that's what I got last time that I used it. Like, I'm just not getting enough blendability. Can't seem to attempt to make it any better. The blendability is just looking really patchy right now, and I'm sorry about that, but you know what? It's not my fault. It is a palette. So we're going to go in with a lower lash line. I'm going to go back in with both Tea Time and Road Trip. So for inner corner and brow bone highlight, we're going to go in with the shade Endless Summer, which is going to be like a really kind of like reflective shadow. Like, see, that one actually looks really pretty as an inner corner highlight. Like, this is still looking very chalky and powdery. Like, this highlighter is very, very glittery, and it goes on beautifully like right here, but then everywhere else there's like so much fallout that it's pretty much ruining the rest of my look. So we're done with that. We're gonna go put on some mascara and some lashes, and I'll be right back to put on a lip with you guys. The lashes are on. The look is almost complete. It is time to throw in a lip. I didn't have a Tarte lip that I really wanted to wear, that I like loved, so I'm gonna go in with this Jouer lip cream in the shade Mirror. I think it's Mirror. Here is the final look. Looking at it from a distance, it looks really pretty, like this bronzy, smoky eye with these dramatic lashes and this really pretty lip. Goes really well together. I think this look is stunning, but getting it to this location and getting it to this point was a pain in the ass, like crazy. So you know what, I'm gonna give you guys my final thoughts on the Aspyn Ovard Tarte palette right now. This is my second attempt. Like I said before, this is my second attempt filming this video, because the first time I almost rushed it, and also it wasn't working to the best of my ability. Like, I know I'm great at blending, I know that I'm pretty good at makeup, and it was not looking that great, and this one almost looks a little bit worse. Let's talk about the blush. The blush was very powdery, had a lot of kickback. I did not really love the color as much, because I would love a little bit more warmth to it. There's almost a little bit too much mauve tone to it. I wasn't a big fan of it. This highlighter is blinding now, but it took a lot in the pan. I had to dig in the pan to get it to come out this way, and it's a little bit too silver for my taste. So blush and highlighter are a no-go for me. Personally, I just don't like the way they look. Now the eyeshadows swatched beautifully, but some of them were okay, some of them were some of them were, you know, whatever, subpar. But now that I put them on my eye, most of the shades on my eye, it's like, there's like not enough pigment to them. The shades Santorini Sands, High School Sweetheart, and Tea Time all look the same to me, and they didn't really give me enough pigment, and also they just weren't blending easily on my eye. They were almost like a little bit powdery, too powdery to me. Like, they were kicked back like a motherfucker. Like, these were like just a lot of kickback, a lot of powder flying all in the air, and they just didn't want to blend properly on my eye for me. Just talk about the shade Heart of Gold. This one was the biggest pain in the ass of all the shades, because it went on beautifully when I wet the brush, but it was just a lot. It took a lot to dig in, a lot to try to work it around, a lot to try to swipe it on my finger and put it on my eye, and right now it's already starting to crease. Like, it's just looking pretty bad. As a foiled shadow, it got my hopes up to here, and it flatlined so bad. But out of all the shades that I used today from this eyeshadow palette, which I used majority of them pretty much, and the blush and the highlighter, I just would like to say this palette is definitely not worth the money to me. This palette is $39. You can only pick this up at Ulta and Ulta.com, and I believe Tarte.com too. I'm not exactly sure. I feel like this palette was just so underwhelming. The colors did not blend beautifully. They did not go on beautifully. There was a lot of powdery kickback. I have not watched any of Aspyn Ovard's videos, so of course, I mean, people have been telling me that her looks are very basic like this, like very neutral looks, and that's completely fine. But I just think that if she were to make a palette like this, I would rather it be like her basic neutrals, but then also some other colors that would be good for her subscribers and fans of Tarte and fans of eyeshadow palette. Personally, I would have put more diversity in this. Honestly, just not really happy with the way that it went out. The palette was just so underwhelming formula-wise, so underwhelming color-wise, just so underwhelming in general. Like, I just feel like this palette just really sucked. And I'm really sorry to say that, but it really sucked. And I really am thinking about just returning it, because this is my second attempt at it, and both attempts went terrible. So I'm sorry that I'm giving it a negative review. I would not bullshit you guys. I also will not like sugarcoat it or anything like that. I want to give you guys my honest opinion, because if I'm spending my money on it, I want to tell you guys if you should or you shouldn't spend your money on it. You know what I mean? I want to give you guys honest reviews. So anyways, that's my honest review, and I'm sorry that it was a little bit negative, but it's just, if you're going to buy a palette for 40 bucks, especially from Tarte, which has some pretty good eyeshadow palettes in the past, then you wouldn't want to spend the money on something that is lacking pigment, lacking colors, a lot of fallout, a lot of powder kickbacks. It just, there was a lot going on with this palette that just was absolutely terrible. So anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure you thumbs it up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the very near future. Love you. Bye.